Can start a Baldur's Gate 3 campaign. I don't know. I really want to start a new single player game before I finish Elden Ring Guilds. January 3, 2025? Wait, this didn't come out yet? Oh, comes out in like 2 weeks. I got Crisis Core that I haven't beat. I haven't played at all yet. I don't know. Yeah, because I like a dragon. I don't know, guys. Play Baldur's Gate 3, but it's 147 gigabyte download. What the fuck? That's crazy. How much space do I even have? I have 830 gigabytes free. I mean, I have the space. Uh, yeah, I think I might install it. Take a while, bro. That's wow. 20 gigabyte download. 147 gigabyte install. Wow. I could play Pal World. I don't really want to play World. Let me just like watch some YouTube or something. I want to watch this tournament that happened. Uh, uh.
You guys should all know me from Throne and Liberty, the only caster to have casted Throne and Liberty until today. Blue Squadron gonna be the second up since the Siege of the Day event that I did with AGS before the game launched. So, yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited. I'm amazed. It's honestly amazing timing that your guild completely folded just before I needed you for this event.
Fucking perfect.
You don't have to be in the event. Fantastic. Because we have 30 guilds. Yes, count it. 30 guilds from North America East signed up for this tournament, and every single one on the forum, it's crazy. It's like a perfect opportunity because I asked on the forum, what's your prediction? Where are you going to come sit in this tournament? And they all said minimum was top 50%. Minimum was top 50%. There were at least 8 teams that all said we're number one. It's not even close. There was one team that said as long as TC gets knocked out, we're definitely number one. So we have a ton of stuff to go through today, and a lot of guilds that are totally up with their ego, because a lot of these guilds have never fought before, Grenton. Like I don't know. Do you like? What guilds have you fought? Give us a history. Give us a history of your rundown of kind of the guilds that you fought in the game, because you were in Ethereum. Ethereum jumped server to server, so you have to know who you think the crowd favorites are today. Who do you think the crowd favorites are in your opinion?
Yeah, these
I
guys
think I fought every single guild on early access at least like twice. In a GVG environment, there's been a couple guilds that really impressed me. Nissa being one of them, which I think they're renamed. They're obviously a guild that's been pretty good pound for pound, just at like a guild v guild level. TC, everyone knows they live in war games, like they live on the Azrael Riftstone. I'd be very surprised if we don't see that just instantly banned every time anyone plays against TC.
Oh yeah.
And then obviously Supple did kind of absorb a ton of Ethereum / Sinisters, Korean vet players, and even some players who just started in NA. So those are kind of like the 3 top guilds, but there's a lot of other guilds that I'm just very excited to see play, because I just haven't had a chance to see them play. Either they're from free-to-play servers that they transferred in, or they're just early access guilds that never really were able to compete on a alliance-wide level. So something like this 48v48, a perfect opportunity to showcase what you got.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely awesome.
I'm gonna be right back.
48v48 was the best format for it. That way you don't have to worry about all 70 people showing up, and you can field kind of your best roster of players. To kind of go over the rules a little bit with you guys, Grant did mention there is a pick ban phase for this tournament. So every match will be flipping a coin, and the winner of the coin toss between the 2 guilds gets to choose either pick or ban. If they choose ban, they get to ban 3 maps, and the other guild gets to choose from the remaining map pool which one they would like to play on. If they choose pick, then the other guild gets to ban 3 maps, and then they get to choose the overall map that they get to play on. So this was kind of done in order, and we're only allowing Riftstones for this tournament, and I already permanently banned Excavator Riftstone from the tournament because I don't know if you've tried to do war games on Excavator, but I don't like their spawn locations are in terrible locations. Which Riftstone would you like to play out? If you had your choice, Gritton, what do you think the Riftstones that we're going to see today?
If I had my choice, I love Azrael. It's one of my favorite Riftstones, and a Dentist. Those are like my 2 favorite Riftstones to either attack or defend. I feel like they're pretty evenly like attackable or defendable. But I mean, just because of the war path that kind of TC put on Azrael, where they just constantly war game different guilds on Azrael, and it was right at the beginning when war games were still very new. I think that Azrael's probably going to be our most banned Riftstone, if I had to guess.
It might be, but like I think a lot of guilds really like that Riftstone. So like,
yeah,
it could go either way. I think there's a few of the Riftstones that wargame specifically. There's some interesting spawn locations to kind of look at, and like choosing which spawn, because when you spawn in war games, it's not like a normal Riftstone, Boonstone. You have 3 different spawn locations that you can kind of go to. And so I think some of them are better for regrouping a little bit further away or taking a different angle on the fight, while others are better for kind of regrouping if you're already on the point. But I do think that Azrael is going to be one of the biggest stones that we're going to see today. Our very first matchup of the day. Let's start breaking it down. Let's take a look at Lock-In versus Vanity here. So I have a guild cards. Oh, look at that production value. It's crazy. It's insane. We have Lock-In here. It was both early access guilds here. Laslin for Lock-In, while Vanity is kind of hailing from Amos here. Lock-In is the 2nd strongest guild in their alliance, while Vanity hails themselves as the strongest guild for sure in their alliance. And Vanity thinks that they're roughly rank 1 or rank 2 on their server overall, while Lock-In kind of feels like they're rank 1. Neither of them has actually won a siege yet, and again, prediction top 10, prediction top 50%. I wouldn't be too misled by sieges. One necessarily does demonstrate how good they are at politics. How much gear they might have is very important, as I think that having arc boss weapons is going to be a very impactful part of this tournament. I don't know, Gretton, what would you say the impact is of having even just one more arc boss weapon than your opponent in this tournament?
In 48v48, it's not as impactful as, say, having like 20, 30 more arc boss weapons for a siege. But depending what you have, I mean, a insane staff dagger with a Bellandir staff just lighting people on fire, or a really good tank who can set up really good clumps with a Bellandir SNS definitely has value. But I feel like a lot of the arc boss weapons, aside from Tevent daggers, Tevent bow, stuff like that, are much more powerful in an AoE setting, a big mass PvP setting, where you might not see a big of a swing if, for example, Lock-In has 48 arc boss weapons and Vanity has 52 spread across the 48 players. So I'm very excited just to see both these teams play. I mean, Vanity, I've had the pleasure of fighting against on Amos when I was with Sinister. I know they fought against the 2 Ethereum guilds, Ethereum Gold and Ethereum, the other color, I forget which one it was, that stayed on Amos.
Was it really that long ago that you already forgot? How long were you in Ethereum?
I'd like to block out that time from my brain, but that's probably why they have no sieges won, because they kind of just stayed on Amos and fought against either Ethereum or Sinister the entire time. Lock-In, Capybara, LLTD, and Coast, like that alliance, I've quite literally never fought against or never heard of. But Lock-In, I have heard of some individual players from there that I'm excited to kind of see pop off.
Yeah. I think that honestly, being rank 1 or rank 2 on your server is telling, right? If you dominate your server, obviously that tells a story of domination, but it doesn't tell you how much you fought. You could just be winning on a dead server, right? Like, how much have you actually fought? Versus Amos, which could or could not be a more competitive server, but it does tell a little bit of a story. So I think Lock-In a little bit more comfortable in this matchup, although they are the 2nd strongest guild in their alliance, Gretton. So based on these 2 infographs, which one would you give the advantage to?
Just because I've seen Vanity play, I'm gonna have to give it to Vanity, because I feel like after saying I've seen Vanity play, if I gave it to Lock-In, it's just me saying that I think Vanity sucks. which I don't think they suck. So I just want to kind of see them go toe to toe with this Laslan squad.
All right, right on. Well, the coin toss is currently underway, and they are in pick ban phase as we speak here. The two guilds squaring off against each other for the very first time. Again, a lot of these guilds, they've never fought each other, Gretton. So like they don't know at all what they're kind of up against. Although I will say that TC Cobra, for what it's worth, basically fights everybody.
Yes.
TC Cobra in war games, they basically have just been fighting literally everyone. So like, if you're gonna ask me, who do you think overall wins this tournament today? Or I mean, in a couple weeks, Gretton?
I don't know. It really depends. I mean, TC obviously crowd favorite, probably one of the strongest GVG guilds. But they're, like I mentioned earlier, there's guilds like Supple. I'm not sure is Fury in this tournament.
Fury is in via tier. So the way the tournament, the way the tournament works is that you can field a team, and as long as everyone in your alliance can field people for your team. Okay, so if you have 240 people in your alliance, you can field a roster of 48 of the best 48 players if you'd like. Now, a lot of the alliances are fielding more than one guild, so you can't really just field your top 48 players necessarily. And a lot of guilds in their alliance, they want to see how strong they are as a standalone guild. But I know that TC really likes to field its top 48 players, and I have not seen them lose in the War Games matchup. However, they just transferred in, and this is some tea, Gren. They just transferred into Zeroth, basically right before Siege, and then lost Siege to Supple. What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
Listen, Supple #1, and I'm not saying that because I'm in Supple. It's just proven, right? They took the pin 3 meme and they made it into a little, call to arms, and they ended up in a very, very well coordinated win on Zeroth. Like I've done a lot of sieges. Obviously, I think I've done every single siege except for one in the game since Korea launched, and I've always been involved in strategy for every single siege that I've ever done. And that pin 10 sort of anchor that they did at the end is the only way that I've ever sort of attacked a siege and won. And I even talked to Krelix, and I asked him, I was like, hey, did you see that in VODs, or did you just cook it up? He goes, no, we just cooked it up. So their head's there. They're a very strong guild. TC's obviously super strong as well. But there's some dark horses I think that we're gonna probably end up seeing in this tournament. Especially there's a guild that I believe their name is Tsunami. I forget what server they're on. But,
Tsunami.
They've been putting in work too. Yeah, I know. I saw them on the bracket, and I know they've been putting in work too. I know a few people who have went to that guild, and Tsunami, they put in work too. So I'm just super excited to see all these guilds actually fight against each other for the first time, because like you mentioned, a lot of guilds found little pockets on what servers they wanted to farm on. Some guilds just said, hey, I don't want to be on a 24/7 PvP server. I want to be on something we can dominate the server, farm arc boss weapons. But now, you got to go toe to toe with the best if you want the money. So.
Yeah, and it certainly is a lot of my money. That is
take Blue's money.
That is all, and by my money, I mean the community's money, because the community gave to me, and I'm giving it back to the community here for this tournament, because I love running tournaments like this. Tsunami's going to be up against Infamy if we want to look up against, look at that matchup real quick while we're setting up the first match here. This is the look forward. This match will be happening today. Infamy versus Tsunami. These are both free-to-play server start guilds. Now, I will say that, Gretton, I don't really personally feel that free-to-play versus early access has too much of an impact anymore. Maybe a month or two ago.
Close. Not even close anymore. There's no more impact. My sweaty brain, I don't think there was even an impact after 3 weeks of free-to-play being out. If there are guilds that are looking at what's happening on early access servers and actually looking at websites with all the resources that is kind of free, any free-to-play guild worth its snuff was able to just catch up. So I think at this point, if you're still kind of using the cope of, oh, but we're a free-to-play guild, so we're never going to be early access guilds, I think you're just bad, and you need to lock in and focus a little bit. But Tsunami is look, they're predicting they're going to end up in the semifinals, and just knowing not even their full roster, but just knowing what their roster looked like, I'm inclined to believe they're going to make it probably that far.
Really?
Infamy, I've never heard of. Zero. But I mean, Yeah, they're both free-to-play guilds coming in, and I mean, Infamy's still on a free-to-play server. Tsunami came on to a early access server, and I believe they did win their most recent Siege too. So,
yeah, and I think that Tsunami, again, they started on a free-to-play server, and then they transferred to Karenix. So the server that they are currently on is Karenix, but they did start as a free-to-play guild on a free-to-play server. They're both rank 1 in their alliance. I'm not exactly sure. I know that New Dawn is actually also in the tournament, so is Hurricane. So this isn't a situation where we're funneling the top 48 from these particular alliances onto the respective guilds. This is a situation where, again, Infamy and Tsunami are kind of fielding the 48 players from their guild. Tsunami's won all 4 sieges. You might not be wrong. I'll be honest with you, they might be the dark horse here. I'm thinking TC. I'm thinking Supple, since Supple just beat TC in Siege, but I think the Supple versus Take Care matchup is actually going to be super interesting if it ever happens. They're on opposite sides of the bracket, but if they do meet in the finals, that will be a match to remember, because again, Supple just beat them in Siege and talked a massive amount of shit, like massive amount of shit. I mean, talking in Siege went on, and so like again, but TC, this is war games. This is not Siege. This is a 48v48. This isn't 240 versus 240. There's not as much coordination necessarily that goes on here. This is much more how good are your individual players? How good is your shot caller? And Gretton, you would know. You and I would both know something about how impactful do you think the shot caller really is here?
So I've been obviously shot calling a very long time in this game. This is also my first PvP MMO, so my experience shot calling lives and dies with Throne and Liberty. But I feel like in war games specifically, just because of how respawns work, your shot caller is more important and also less important at the same time. It's a really weird in between, because how you attack, how you do that initial engage, if you win that initial engage, is, large in part on your shot caller and setting up a proper engage and peeling when you need to and maybe baiting cooldowns. But because of the respawn bubbles and you're able to just kind of run in and funnel in, individual skill, like you said, I think is even more important in war games than it is in any other aspect of this game aside from like arenas. But we're not doing an arena thing here. We're doing a 48v48 GVG, and I think your individual skill and how you play with your actual static and how you talk in micros is actually more important in war games than having a good shot caller.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. What cooldowns do you think? I mean, obviously you have like Stalwart Bastion, you have Blessed Barrier and things like this. What cooldowns do you think are going to be most important for this tournament in large scale PvP? Again, I think like calling out your tank cooldowns, Blessed Barrier, and everybody hates Flash Wave. Everybody hates Flash Wave. Are you calling Flash Waves in groups here? Flash Wave is probably the most impactful large-scale PvP skill in the game, even after its most recent nerf on the width. And that was just like the skill specialization. It's still roughly the width of an interstate. Even
That's a really good way. Right. I mean, so I'm always of the mind, and I've been blessed by playing with players who are exceptional, and I didn't really have to kind of handhold them. So I would just say like, hey, we're engaging, or get me asleep, go now. And then everyone knew what button to press. I know that's not the reality for everybody. I always found calling flash waves kind of cringe. Because if you're a bow player and you're not shooting a flash wave into a sea of red, just take your bow off. Like, what are you doing, right? But I do think important things that you want to call or try to bait even. I don't see a lot of guilds actually like baiting cooldowns, like running up, watching everyone pop their cooldowns on the enemy, and then just running back and tornadoing, to stop them from engaging with full cooldowns. But you want to make sure you're not engaging into blood devos. You want to make sure, obviously, you're not engaging into tornadoes. And more importantly, on the DPS side, I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of spear dagger players go absolutely mental. People are complaining about flash waves. Flash waves are really good in like sieges and world bosses and stuff like that. But I promise you, we're going to see some absolute demonic spear dagger plays today, just because of how it works right now. It's going to be crazy.
I think, I don't know, personally, there were people talking about, people are kind of split on this in terms of what composition is actually the best in the game, and this is why I didn't make a rule for it for the tournament. A lot of people were like, you need to make compositional rules so they don't run 48 tanks. What are we doing? Almost like they want to run 48 tanks, you just get run, or like it might be a little harder than you think if that happens. So I think that a lot of guilds, because I looked at some of the rosters earlier today, a lot of the guilds are actually, some of them are more traditional. Some of them are running like 1 healer, 1 tank, and 3 DPS or 4 DPS in every single party. And then while others are kind of all DPS with just bow staff users, and then there's some people that are running a lot of tanks. So I actually think that a lot of these guilds, what we're seeing clash here is a lot of people's opinions about what is best in large scale PvP, right? Like, because a lot of people have a lot of opinions. Go ahead.
I mean, we saw guilds try to do the tank heavy thing. I mean, there was literally the guild Tanks in Liberty who tried to do the tank heavy thing, and anytime they fought a guild that was, you know, even above average, they just got walked because the tanks weren't able to actually provide kill pressure. It was just too tank heavy. But then also, I've fought guilds who have 0, you know, front line, 0 tanks, and I just get to just hold W through them, which is super fun. So I do think there is a balance. I've been asked a lot, oh, Grenton, what do you think the best comp is for a GVG? And I've always given comp numbers based on 70-man rosters, right? Because that's what you're going to GVG with mostly. I've actually never thought about a wargame roster because wargames came out while we were, you know, in this weird transition period for the guilds that I was a part of, and I didn't really want to deal with that. I was dealing with, you know, guild stuff. So I'm very curious to see what comps come out. I will say we fought TC. They weren't tank heavy. It was one of the first kind of war games that we did was against CC. They weren't very tank heavy, but their range DPS were running a ton of shield rune synergies, and I never felt more paper in my entire life as a tank. It was terrifying to play against that sort of. They had maybe it looked like 10 to 12 tanks, a couple blood devo bots, and then a lot of range DPS that were just mowing through our front line. And because we had no front line, they were just able to walk through. Their tanks were able to just walk through and pressure our backline. So it's interesting to see. This was obviously pre-spear, or right when spear was coming out, and a lot of people didn't uncover like the spear dagger tech. But I've seen some absolute craziness come out from spear dagger players, and it makes me happy because I'm a melee enjoyer at heart. Even though, you know, spear dagger, you're kind of like chucking spears from 20 meters away. But
don't you play SNS dagger?
No, I play SNS spear now.
Okay, but before you were
but
an
I was
SNS
at
dagger,
SNS dagger before,
yeah, so that's where we're at, guys. Like, it's one of these people. Why did you? Okay, before we get into that, just very quickly, why did you choose SNS dagger?
Okay, very simple. SNS Greatsword is for crayon munchers who don't know how to think critically and they just know how to hold W. Okay. SNS Wand is for people who just never want to die and set up sleep bombs. SNS Dagger is still, even with SNS Spear, is still the best initiator in the entire game. I was up to 2.2, 2.3k evasions with SNS Dagger. I could Shadow Strike into a middle of an enemy ball, taunt them all, use my, even before Bellendir Shield, slow 70 people, and just watch people get mowed down by flash waves. I was not the main character. I was simply a chess piece that they will put into the middle of the enemy ball, and I would slow everyone down, and they would just die. But people in this game think tanks are the main character, and they're wrong.
What I love about it, Grenton, is it shows that even there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions about what is good and what is bad in Throne and Liberty. And if you're a new guild, or if you're a new player out there, you need to understand that pretty much any weapon combination can work in any situation, so long as you are good and you know how to use it correctly, right? So even if something is crazy, and I'm sorry, but SNS Dagger is not a common thing. And even something as crazy as SNS Dagger can absolutely work as long as you understand the game, you understand your skills, and you're having fun with it. That's all that really matters. You can absolutely make it in large scale. I'm curious what compositions and skill loadouts we might see today in terms of DPS classes. You already said Spear Dagger. And you might be right about that because I've been playing a lot of Spear myself lately, and Spear has a lot of damage and CC potential and engage potential. Throwing it with the dagger only amplifies that damage, right? Super important. Yep. I felt like SNS Spear is a little bit stronger because it gives you a little bit more tankiness, a little bit more lockdown potential, but I can understand if you're just solely running as a DPS, it helps you get into those flanking positions with the dagger's invisibility and things like this. Could be extremely, extremely helpful. But what other, because there's a lot of people out there that think that crossbow is super good, and Granted, in my opinion, crossbow in large scale PvP, I think in Siege, it can be really good because people aren't paying attention. But in a 48v48 format, do you think that the crossbow users are going to do super well today?
So I'm going to answer it by just saying that every single crossbow player that I know who is an exceptional crossbow player has swapped to Spear Dagger. So I'll just put that out there. I think that crossbow right now isn't super strong. In tier 2 with Talandre, there are giant Cordy crossbow, which is the arc boss in Talandre, that kind of gives you a vacuum on your spin, which makes it absolutely insane. But right now it's kind of bad, I would say, for large scale. It's still a great PvE
format.
setup.
Right.
Yeah, for even this format, GVG, even Siege, I would just rather spear daggers, me personally. They crossbows still have to get up close and personal to do their damage. Spear just deals more of it. The reason spear dagger is so much more punishing to play against than, for example, SNS spear is because they have the option of running lightning infusion, and also the umbral specialization that has the lightning, which spreads their lightning debuff, which reduces endurance, which they spread by chucking spears. So they'll go in, they'll get 5 stacks, and they'll just throw a bunch of spears, and the entire ball is now endurance shredded and still getting absolutely melted by the SNS the spear dagger. Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spear SNS is interesting though, because it is, in my opinion, now the most fun tank that this game has. It's an in between of SNS Greatsword and SNS Dagger. It doesn't engage as fast as